Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about neutral density filters, ND filters for your Mavic Air and how they can improve your quality footage. So if you're looking for more cinematic footage with your DJI Mavic Air, let's get right into it. I just received the DJI brand of ND filters in the mail. There are many brands of ND filters out there, brands like Polar Pro, Sandmark, FS Labs, several others who make and manufacture ND filters for your Mavic Air. But the ones I'm talking about today are the ones specifically sold and manufactured by DJI. This brand of ND filters was originally out of stock when I had initially purchased my Mavic Air earlier this year. These ND filters come in a small black case with a small plastic clip in the front that keeps the case from opening accidentally. It's just a hard plastic case, nothing fancy, but the filters do fit snugly into their designated spots. The case is actually quite compact, which I actually like, so I can just toss it in my camera bag or my pocket and go. The DJI brand of ND filters comes in a set of 3, which include the ND4, the ND8, and the ND16. This set on the DJI website runs for about $59. That's US. I've also seen these on sale on Amazon's website, but they seem to still be out of stock as of the posting of this video. And I'll put a link to these filters below if you want to check them out or are thinking about buying them. The ND4 filter allows 1/4 of incoming light through, which is equal to a 2-stop filter, which is best for low light conditions, such as early stages of sunrise and late stages of sunset. The ND8 filter allows 1/8 of the incoming light through, which is equal to a 3-stop filter, which is best for cloudy and overcast days with mid-level light. The ND16 filter allows for 1/16 of the incoming light through, which is equal to a 4-stop filter, which is best used in partly cloudy or sunny days. The weather hasn't been so cooperative lately, so I'm glad we finally got a little sun here in New Jersey. I shot this footage on Thursday, and it doesn't look like we're getting much sun around here until the following Friday, and I wanted to get a video out on these filters. Okay, moving on. Before we get into the actual footage I took earlier today, I wanted to clarify something regarding ND filters. Although many believe that an ND filter's sole purpose is to work as a pair of sunglasses for your quad, there's more to it than that. Let me just explain quickly. An ND filter serves one primary purpose. It allows you to set the correct shutter speed that gives you the appropriate amount of motion blur in between each frame that allows you to create a cinematic look, which your eyes are accustomed to seeing. That's it. Blurring and softening images and videos helps you avoid rigid and unnatural movements. It gives you a softer, more natural look, and an ND filter is tinted to varying levels of transparency dependent upon the ND rating. While an ND filter's primary purpose is to give you the appropriate amount of motion blur, it does reduce the amount of light that enters the camera's sensor, while having a minimal effect on the color and the sharpness of the image. Changing the amount of light entering the camera helps you control the exposure of your shot. If this doesn't make sense to you now, that's okay. As you continue to shoot video and learn more about flying your Mavic Air, you'll hear about things like motion blur, and this will make more sense to you later. To further understand the use of ND filters, you'll also want to be familiar with something called the 180-degree shutter speed rule. The 180-degree shutter speed rule is basically this. When you're shooting video, you shoot with a shutter speed that's 1/2 times the frame rate. Or, more simply stated, you should set the shutter speed to twice that of your frame rate. For example, if you were to shoot at 24 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/48 of a second. If you're shooting at 25 frames per second, your shutter speed should be approximately 1/50th of a second. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/60th of a second. The reason for this 180-degree rule is it establishes a video recording that contains what most would consider to be natural movement. In most cases, you want to set your ISO as low as possible, ideally 100. The reason for this is the higher that you set your ISO, the more noise you get in the image. Again, you want the lowest possible ISO possible for the best footage. Next, adjust your shutter speed, but in many instances, to maintain that 180-degree shutter speed rule, you'll need to use an ND filter. Without an ND filter, your ISO will be much higher and you'll have more noise in the image. Because the Mavic Air has a fixed aperture setting of 2.8, the only adjustments that you can make are to the ISO and to the shutter speed. Your video will still look okay without the ND filters, but for the next level of good footage, you want to start trying to apply the 180-degree shutter speed rule to give you the proper motion blur. If you don't have a lot of movement in your footage, then most of what I've previously stated is irrelevant, and ND filters and the 180-degree shutter speed rule probably don't really apply. For example, if you're shooting a subject on the ground and your drone's 400 feet in the air, the concept of how much motion blur you have per frame isn't really going to matter. So this whole topic is relevant to your subject matter and what you're actually shooting. For me, I like to fly my Mavic Air very low to water and often very low to the ground. So this concept of motion blur does apply, and I want to use the 180-degree shutter speed rule to make sure that my shutter speed is set correctly. If you're shooting something like a waterfall, moving water, you can really notice the motion blur in those types of shots. The ND filter, they go on pretty easy. The set I received from DJI comes with a little piece of plastic covering to protect the lens from prints, and just remember to remove those little pieces. They're on the front and on the back of the ND filters when you receive them. You simply grab the gimbal firmly so it's not moving around, unscrew the existing front piece, which is already in place, and simply thread on your new ND filter. I found removing the pre-existing threaded piece, which actually has, just FYI, actually has no lens in it. It's just a cap with no glass in it. It can be a little difficult. Mine was on there pretty tight from the manufacturer, so it took a few tries to actually get a good grip on the gimbal to remove it. It's best just to turn your Mavic Air upside down and then firmly hold the gimbal in one hand while unscrewing the pre-existing cap that's installed while it was manufactured by DJI with the other hand. Always got to correct myself with that DJI. Another trick to getting a grip and removing the pre-existing cap, if it's too tight, is to use a rubber band. This will just let you get a better grip on it. No need to over tighten when installing your new ND filters. You just want to make sure that it's completely threaded onto the gimbal so it's not coming loose in flight. That's it. Your new ND filters are installed. That's all. Now let's go over the camera settings within the DJI Go 4 app one more time. I've actually covered this in previous videos, but as a refresher for those who may be new to the channel, let me walk through this process of setting up the shot within the DJI Go 4 app. In the camera settings, always switch to manual mode, move your ISO to the lowest possible setting, and adjust your shutter speed. Again, following the rule of 180. Be sure you've applied your ND filters before you start making all these adjustments. Also, point your Mavic Air in the direction that you're going to be shooting. So you're making the adjustments specific to the direction and the lighting that you're going to be flying. Also, be sure to match the white balance to match the conditions outside. Cloudy and sunny are often work best, but you can choose a custom setting as well. And finally, if you're doing color editing, select Descent Alike, as it gives you the most flexibility in post-production. As I've discussed in previous videos, you'll also want to turn on your histogram. If you're not familiar with this tool, I'll give you the link here to check it out. It's here or here. It covers the histogram in more detail. Turn on overexposure warnings. This will give you a white diagonal bars to show you where you may be overexposed. You can then dial down your shutter speed and apply a darker ND filter. And finally, you can enable your grid lines to follow the rule of thirds as also discussed in one of my previous videos. I'll leave a link to that here as well. So I hope you found this information helpful and it provided you some value. Please give the video a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And you can also follow me on Instagram. And if you're an active subscriber, I really do thank you. And if you're not an active subscriber, I hope you'll think about subscribing. And until next time, happy flying.